Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Hello and a very good morning to you. Welcome to Political Spectrum. It's coming to you live on Spectrum Television. Hello from me. I am Raymond Etam. And thanks for joining us on the show today and for the week as well, as we look to prep you up with the latest activities making the rounds from across the country. Of course, before we delve into what we have for you today proper, there's a need to remind you about the major political activities that took place over the course of last week, which saw pretty exciting activities taking place within political parties, gearing for several offices as we prep up for the 2023 general elections. Much of last week was dominated by former Vice President and the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who took his campaign to the southeastern parts of the country, where he, of course, touched down in the Anambra State capital, Awka, making series of promises to voters in Anambra and the southeast, and also assuring that an who was in the U.S. for the U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit, where he was played host to by U.S. President Joe Biden, who called him a model for democracy in Africa. We also saw the campaign train of the APC presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu being taken to different quarters. Bulk of that will look to address in the coming days, and of course in the cost of burning issues today, we'll be looking at keener revelations from a statement issued by FARC last week about the breakdown of federal allocations given to the federal, state and local governments across the country. But as usual, we started the show this morning with the latest political updates from across the country, and let's make do with some of the bigger stories this morning. And we'll begin with President Muhammadu Buhari, who has of course said there's no reason for INEC not to conduct free, fair and credible elections in 2023. And INEC also saying that permanent voter cards, of course, are likely to be manipulated as we look forward to next year's general elections. We'll also bring you up to speed with all the information that you need to know about stories making the headlines. Stay with us when we come back from this break. Political updates will continue. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Let's begin with a roundup of the day's biggest political news stories and events. And first in the news, President Muhammadu Buhari has said that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has no reason not to conduct free, fair and credible elections in 2023, as he has approved all that was requested by the electoral umpire. Well, the president made this by the United States Institute of Peace, USIP, the International Republican Institute, the National Endowment for Democracy, as well as the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Well, the president asserted his confidence in INEC's readiness for the 2023 general elections. Meanwhile, the president had said Nigeria's agricultural revolution has actually led to the creation of over 13 million direct and indirect jobs in the last 7.5 years. And on that premise, he has advised Western nations not to be in a rush to eliminate the usage of fossil fuels in a bid to ensure a healthy climate. And furthermore, the president stated that Nigeria's economy has actually registered positive growth in the last 2 quarters, despite the gloomy outlook in the global economy, coupled with the ongoing war in Ukraine. So we hope on the premise of Mr. President's statement, INEC should be looking ready to conduct the elections proper. Well, still on the upcoming elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says politicians buying permanent voter cards, PVCs, to manipulate the 2023 general elections are actually engaging in what they've called futile effort. Well, INEC National Commissioner Festus Okoye stated this during a televised interview, noting that the strategy deployed by some is not going to work. Well, according to INEC, the bimodal voter registration system, BVAs, and the technology that will be used for the accreditation and authentication of voters come 2023 will reject biometric data of persons who are not original owners of the traded PVCs. Well, two non-governmental organizations, the Northern Elders Forum NEF and the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP, both alleged that politicians are buying PVCs from poor voters to manipulate the next elections. However, Okoye described as an impossibility the plan by those he called electoral offense to be found with a PVC that does not belong to one, noting that security agencies have the responsibility to go after such individuals as well as prosecute them. Meanwhile, ahead of the 2023 general elections, the European Union has pledged to support credible polls in Nigeria. Well, speaking during a visit to the Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, at the government house in Benin City, EU Ambassador to Nigeria, Samuela Isopi, said Nigeria's progress is of importance as its partner and a continental neighbor. Well, according to the European Union, she has supported the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and other stakeholders by providing technical assistance as well as expertise. Africa's most populous nation. Now, describing Europe as Nigeria's main neighbor, the EU ambassador said they expect to have a strong democratic Nigeria, and that is why it continues to support Nigeria's democracy and will continue to do so. We'll stay with election matters now, but the focus is on the NYSC as the National Youth Service Corps has won core members who are willing to participate in the general election to be neutral and apolitical. But the acting Director General of the NYSC, Christy Uba, stated this while addressing core members at the Mbauku Umwawulu Permanent Orientation Camp, which is in Oka South local government area of Anambra State. While the acting DG said election duty was voluntary for core members and those who wished to take part must eschew all form of malpractice that could undermine the integrity of the poll or the reputation of the scheme. Well, she said the NYSC would not hesitate to surrender any core member with a proven case of electoral malfeasance to the state to face the laws of the land. In the meantime, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has urged President Muhammadu Buhari to direct appropriate anti-corruption agencies to identify as well as arrest politicians who are allegedly buying permanent voter cards, PVCs, from poor Nigerians, as well as promptly bring them to justice. Well, SERAP also urged the president to ensure that politicians and their sponsors who are suspected to be involved in these grave electoral and human rights crimes are named and shamed regardless of their political affiliations. Well, INEC recently alleged that some politicians were buying PVCs from poor Nigerians across the country, with the Northern Elders Forum corroborating the allegations and reportedly stating that some politicians were buying PVCs for as low as 2,000 naira in the north. Well, in a letter signed by SERAP's Deputy Director, Kolawale, the organization said buying PVCs from poor Nigerians is a threat to represent. Well, a quick update from Osun State, where political matters have got into a headsway as the Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke has played down the withdrawal of some of these aids by the Department of State Service. Well, as at the time of filing this report, we're yet to get full details as to what necessitated the withdrawal of security aids from Governor Ademola Adeleke, who's only been in office barely a month after replacing ex-Governor Gboyega Oyetola. Well, yesterday there were reports making rounds that the Department of State Services, DSS, had withdrawn its detail from the security team of Governor Ademola Adeleke. Well, the governor has said there's no cause for alarm, while we're of course expecting further clarification in the course of today to ascertain the reason why these aids were actually withdrawn. We'll expect political neutrals and experts to say this is all part of the politicking and the verbal war that has ensued between Governor Ademola Adeleke's camp and ex-Governor Oyetola. Barely some political updates, but stay with us. The bigger issues to look forward to: a breakdown of Fox allocation to the federal, state and local governments across the country. How well have these funds been shared, and its importance to economic and national growth? We'll be joined by public affairs analyst Ekemini David on burning issues when we come back from this short timeout. Do stay with us. Political Spectrum. We'll return.
Police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the...
But we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Political Spectrum, and it's live on Spectrum Television. Don't forget, you can always follow us on our social media platforms and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtv.ng. I do well to stay with us as we get straight into the burning issues proper for today, and the first of which we're going to be focusing on keenly today, is the breakdown of the Federation Account Allocation Committee, who at the end of its meeting last week announced that it has shared a total sum of 902.053 billion naira to the three tiers of government as of November 2022. And the breakdown of amounts received actually showed that the federal government got about 358.51 billion naira, the state receiving 270.836 billion, and the local government councils getting 204.130 billion naira. Well, this is a lot of money to talk about, but how well have they been used in terms of putting the economy of the country in shape, ensuring natural or national growth, as well as improving on the lot of Nigerians across the country? To help us get a deeper perspective on this, joining us over the line is Public Affairs Today.
Thank you very much, Raymond, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure joining you again.
It's a pleasure. And by the way, welcome back from Nairobi, Kenya, where you were just one of few Nigerian speakers at the recent conference held in the Kenyan capital. Just quickly put us through on what happened at that conference and the goals to look forward to before we go into the day's issue proper.
Well, for me, it was a beautiful outing. All students and, of course, student leaders in Africa had to converge at the Strathmore University in Kenya, Nairobi. And that was for the Pan-African Universities Championship. And for me, I was one of the frontline delegates from Nigeria, of course, flying the green, white, green flag over there. And as consistency and God will have it, we emerged.
Impressive indeed. But I wonder how impressive your concerns would be about the breakdown of the Federation Account Allocation Committee's report last week, and just how much has been shared to the three tiers of government, be it the federal, state, and the local government. A lot of money, but it begs the question as to why Nigeria's economy continues to wanton in the current state that it is at the moment, even when so much money is going around the coffers of all three tiers of government. First off, your response to the breakdown from FARC last week.
Okay, so first is that the Federal Allocation Account has always had the culture of displaying the totality of what it allocates to state government, local government, which are the entirety of the tiers of government. If there's anything I would want to commend FAAC for, is that level of openness. As a person, I've been following up data and statistics of allocation of the fact that the openness has always been very genuine. Secondly, is the fact that the numbers and statistics given by the FARC, as of last week, of course, it should be a pointer to Nigerians that, number one, the fact that those statistics cannot be countered, that those statistics cannot be battled, and those statistics cannot be criticized by any of these tiers of government means there's some level of commitment to faithfulness, commitment to honesty, commitment to public sincerity from the side of the federal government. So I give it to them at that level. Secondly, on the crumbling phase of Nigeria's economy, despite the tone and degrees of money invested from the top alone. Of course, you cannot keep allocating or allotting blames to the men at the top alone at the federal government, being responsible for the crumbling of the Nigeria's economy. Because, at every level and at every tier of leadership in this country, people are responsible. And of course, people are also responsible for even the least space, even in your village, even in your local government, in your community, in your state. And so where your state is not doing well, you entirely cannot blame the federal government for that. Where your local government is not doing well, you cannot blame the federal government for that. So for me, it is about the negligence of responsibility on the part of those who are leading their respective tiers of government. You can imagine, for instance, I am one person who has always battled the type of state government over the years, over the insincerity in the appropriate usage of funds allocated funds to that which is given to local government area. It is always a major problem. So for me, the federal government doesn't have any issue with this. Of course, the fact that these statistics and the numbers, the funds are incontestable, proves a strong point to us that these people are being honest with what they are doing. So the chunk of the problem we are having now is with those at the state and of course at the local government level, especially the state. I want to remind you, Raymond, my brother, I hope you are aware and you remember the fact that during the constitutional review in our type of state, I was one of the persons who have presented a memorandum there. And I presented a memorandum that, that state government accounts, there should be a dismantling of the joint account between state and local government areas, because it was simply making this, whereas these local government chairmen are helpless and cannot make any complaints. They cannot say anything because they themselves are those placed there by the leadership of their state. So they cannot actually fight or resist against such actions from the state government.
Well, interestingly, you appear to have given the federal government some sort of soft landing here by, so to say, the allocation of the country and the nation's revenue is being shared. Looking at the breakdown here, getting 358.51 billion naira for the federal government as opposed to 270.836 billion naira for the state. It leads us back to that age-long debate about developing the country and on whose decks it rests to take up what responsibility or not. One common debate or wrangling that we've had to settle with over the years has always been the issue of what project belongs to the federal government or the state government in respective states across the country. And only recently, President Buhari did say some state governments were, coughing out or making do with local government funds, although he stopped just short of mentioning which of these states are actually affected or which governors are actually complicit in this. But the fact that the federal government is getting this huge amount of money, and some would still say there's little or nothing to show for it, would you say they're also culpable with the fact that Nigerians have not really benefited from this huge largesse, courtesy of Fox breakdown?
Okay, so for me, giving the federal government a soft landing is on the aspect that it had been able to bear out the statistics of the funds allocated to the respective tiers of government. I am not commending the government, on grounds that it has done, more or it has done less. I was only saying that to make sure that these statistics are out, from the federal allocation account that are made public to Nigerians, was a good proof of public sincerity or public honesty. But then, on the side of whether or not the state or federal government is supposed to take a greater chunk of the money, as regards the chunk of responsibilities that they have, and of course having pointers to prove that actually the federal government has actually, utilized the reality before us here, and that is the fact that we must not forget the fact that state governments make money from very many means as compared to the federal government. Yes, state governments make money from very many means as compared to the federal government. Now, most times,
while there may be some truth to what you're saying, this is not devoid of the fact that the kind of system we still operate in the country still allows for state governments, regardless whatever they generate by way of IGR in their respective states, they still have to channel everything to the center, who in turn now determines what the state should get. And this is something most state governments have always kicked against over the years.
Well, for me, on this particular issue, sentiments of politics, it is one that is centered on the sentiments, on the clear sentiments of politics. Of course, we've had states who have personally generated their funds, and of course are using it for themselves, and we can of course glaringly see the effect of what they have been doing. Take for instance the River State, led by you can of course evidently see, what he is using his own allocated funds, both his allocated funds and his internally generated, sending everything to the center. Number one is the constitutional effect. Number two is the place of party sentiment. So it does not allow them the opportunity to do that. But then, capitally, no matter how minute, the money or the funds you may have as a state government, it plays down to do, courtesy of the amount of money he is getting. There are some states who are earning bigger, who are earning more. But then the people cannot see anything evident in their states to point out to that, look, my state is getting such amount of money. There are states who are earning so much, who are earning so, like on a daily basis or consistently. They're taking so much amount of money from the federal government, as their allocation. Some of these are states who are suffering very poor sense of education. These are states who are suffering very poor sense of infrastructural development. These are states who are suffering a high level of unemployment, and all of these things. But these are states who are consistently paid, on a daily basis or consistently by the federal government. So it is about the will. And then we also have states like Ebonyi State. Take for instance, a state like Ebonyi State. It is earning minutely. It is earning little from will to drive change in his state. So for me, in as much as I would want to say that maybe sometimes, or maybe most times, the funds allocated to state governments could be minute, could be small, could be little. But I think it is in the place of the governor to say, look, with the little resources I have, let me channel it into developing certain areas. And then let the people see it and know that, okay, look, though it is small, but we have development courtesy of these even minute allocations and all of that. For me, on the federal government side, we should also understand the fact that development in the federal government, at the federal level, may not always be very close to us the way, that in the state and local government level will be. Most of us would be complaining that there is no development in Nigeria, whereas they are not speaking, for the federal government. But then you would also have to understand that the attracting of federal projects is a process. Seeing federal projects is a process, and these processes are always facilitated. This is politics and governance we are talking about. So we have to understand that if you are saying the federal government has not done, anything, you have to act at the set out projects the federal government had for the year to complete or had for the year to do. Because the federal government set up projects for itself, they want to accomplish. So you have to ask yourself, what are these set up projects and what are the degrees to which these projects have been achieved in a year? So we Nigerians cannot actually make these questions and find answers to them. We cannot ascertain whether or not the federal government has not done well with whatever allocations it has. So that is it from me at that point.
So interestingly, the more matter of granting local governments full autonomy, and I'm premising this argument on the back of the recent comment I made earlier on about President Buhari's allegation that some governors were taking monies meant for their local government. And a short while ago, you did say it was perhaps about time that we put an end to the debate about full autonomy for the local government. Until this is achieved, do you consider any chances of the so-called joint accounts method of practice going away anytime soon?
So my brother, on the issue of the joint account, if I can get your question very clearly. Sorry, I'm on the road, so a bit of the questions are quite breaking. So if I can get your question very clearly on the joint account issue, for me as a person, it is not a good idea, and I have always had reasons for always countering this particular practice project we should carry out. The federal government gave allocations to certain local governments. They gave it in a state like our state, where a local government could be earning about 200 and something million, or 200 and something, or 100 and something million every month from the government, as against the over 200 and something million it had, or the over 100 and something million it had. The question is, how much will the local government chairman take as his own salary? How much will be paid to the staff in the local government? How much will be back? Now, this is the reason why I am personally against so many facilitative factors. Number one, I am personally against the fact that a single party has to produce leadership across the local government, because it does not allow for the places of checks and balances, regardless whether or not they. Let's be very honest to ourselves. The governor facilitates the allegiance of almost all the local government chairmen across in his state. And these people have to play by the tune of the governor. You are a witness to what happens in our state, that anywhere you try or you attempt to resist the power of the state government, you are meant to become, one person. Too many issues at the grassroots at the state level that is facilitating the consistent underdevelopment of local government and grassroots, and grassroots government.
Oh, so just taking you up on that. In the light of all this, without that, We still get to see the state governments call the shots, and that's perhaps because of certain provisions within the 1999 Constitution yet to be amended that still grants certain powers to the recent example you gave of a few incidents that happened a few years ago when some local government chairmen disagreed over the idea of allowing full autonomy for the local government because they seem to be quite content.
Okay, so for me, the legislature owes Nigerians a greater chunk of the responsibility to ensuring that they facilitate the possibility and the emergence of this particular policy. For me, I am strongly of the support that Nigeria should have a common law or a collective law binding the allocation of funds in this country. Now, what I mean there is that each of these chairs of government and the National Assembly owes Nigerians this responsibility. You cannot allow this responsibility into the hands of the state legislature. No, because the state legislature itself is already heavily manipulated by the government at the state level. And of course, subsequently, they also manipulate the government at the grassroots level. So for me, there was a constitutional review assignment some years ago or a year ago. I am inclusive, had agitated that the joint accounting should be abolished. Tiers of government should independently own their funds and regulate their funds. The local government is capable of supervising, appropriating, and using our funds on our own for the betterment of our people. The state government should not determine what the local governments do. The state government cannot know the entirety of the problems in the local government. We are the ones who live in the local government, Nigerians, a great sense of responsibility. Number one, to appropriate and, of course, effect the memorandum of Nigerian people during the constitutional review. And number two, to ensure that laws are made to allow these tiers of government to operate independently. So that is me on the place of legislation.
So let's come to the breakdown proper. And a short while ago, I did talk about President Buhari making allegations that some state governors were actually taking local government money for themselves. But let's look at the breakdown proper of which states have actually benefited more from the so-called Federation Account Allocation Committee. And the statistics available to us here is from between January and, of course, as of October, late October 2022. And from the data available to us, Delta State comes. Not unsurprising to see 3 states from the South who are also part of the Niger Delta region coming tops here from amongst the states that have benefited more from the Federation Account Allocation Committee. And we find Akwa Ibom State second on this picture here because only recently they were both in the eye of the storm following allegations or reports rather from Governor NYSC of Rivers State that the federal government had paid 13% derivatives to all the states in the Niger Delta region. And 2 of the states that came out to debunk this claim, so to say, were the Delta State Governor, Ifeanyi Okowa, who had said not all the monies were actually paid, still being owed some. But based on this report, the fact that Akwa Ibom State and indeed some states in the South enjoy more from the national cake or the national largesse, it's a wonder why we've not seen perhaps enough of projects by way of since we begin asking questions, why are we getting more and there's little on the ground to see?
Well, my brother, you see, it still affirms what I had said earlier about having the right and positive political will to run the necessary development in our states. Of course, in the places in our society and the places that we find ourselves. It is the same situation that we are faced with. Of course, thank God you mentioned it at Delta State and Akwa Ibom State, the fact that they are the highest earning, from the FAC account. I was expecting them to come deny that, but gratefully, their silence on that proves actually that the federal government is in line that they are the highest earning. That is because, number one, they are producing more, they are sending more to the federal government, they are sending more to the center, the government at the center. And of course, as way of returns, they have to earn more as well. But then there is a problem we are facing, and that is the problem I keep emphasizing on. And it is the problem of matching what we earn with our own gratuity. I think just about a few weeks ago, Governor Zulum of Borno State had paid the entirety of gratuities arrears owed to all teachers in public public schools, in Borno State. That is a state that's not even earning close to what we are earning in this place. But as I'm speaking to you, Akwa Ibom State as a state is still suffering the effect of, owing of gratuities, to public servants, to retired public servants, and of course to teachers as well. As we speak to you, this is a state that is still suffering education from people, from organizations who are still taking so much loans. Do you understand? Now, this is a state, this is practically a state that just about a lot is happening as regards underemployment. We are on the top chart of states where unemployment is thriving, and of course youth unengagement and all of that.
Just to ask, are you discontented with perhaps the fact that we're receiving so much money in other areas of the economy improving, as opposed to the reports we've received from the state government that yes, it has channeled a bulk of these resources to several areas that they have mentioned, courtesy of the governor's mantra of industrializing the state. So is your argument based on the fact that these have not been done, or whatever it is that has been done is perhaps not enough in your own view?
My point is that whatever development pieces that the governor or the government is pointing to, the question we have to ask ourselves is, compared to what we have gotten over the year, can we say that this development, match the sum that we have always earned, all of these years? That is number one. If we want to point out the development, stripes of the government, we will talk about road construction. We'll talk about majorly road construction, project commissioning and all of that. But sadly, most of these projects we're talking about are projects that we only hear by name. These are projects that when we go to see them,
the watching public, just to inundate us on some of the areas the governor said a bulk of his developments will be targeted at, and this came on the back of his presentation of the 2022 budget to the State House of Assembly late 2021. According to the accounts, according to the governor, the focal point would be on the implementation of his 8-point completion agenda, and I'd like you to touch on them in your responses. That includes industrialization, aviation, education, rural and riverine area development, agriculture, small and medium-scale enterprises, infrastructural expansion and consolidation, as well as security and human.
Well, if I would want to get you very clearly, you see, the truth of the matter is, I am one person that I don't generalize development. I take development one after the other. I was about explaining the policy of industrialization and of course how evident development has become, or how evident development is in that particular sector.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, talking about industrialization. Now, one of the questions we should be asking ourselves today is, talk about the petrol factory, talk about the toothpick factory or industry and all of that. Talk about all of those industries that the governor kept mentioning and all that. How many of them are producing at the moment? How many of them are up and running at the moment? Because when you say you have created development as a result of the funds you have for the economy of the state, then we have most of these projects that are not running. These projects are not up and running. We only get to hear them by name. If you talk about education, I have told you already that former teachers in public schools are still owed till date. So when we say we have brought development to the educational sector, we should be talking about the actors in this sector. Have they been taken care of? The answer is no. Number two, what is the pace of infrastructural development from the tertiary institutions to the secondary and then to the basic institution? As I speak to you, a school like the College of Health Technology is still laying waste. Infrastructures are not developed there. If you go to that institution, you will be embarrassed for yourself at the level of other development that is there. I mean, a supposed College of Art, Science and Technology. But this is a state that is saying it wants to invest into, evolution. As I speak to you, if you go to most of the secondary schools in this state, you will understand that if there is any attention paid to the development of science laboratories, it is only when external examinations are coming. So where then do we say the money are invested to as regards education? In tertiary education, you would attest with me that the last time student bursary was paid was during the reign of Governor Godswill Pavio. Ever since then, students have not been paid bursary. Justly. To very poor students. Until today, we do not know the fate of that particular scholarship. The government is going to end in just about 6 or 5 months. So where then do we say the government or the governor has invested into the development of education?
Well, wouldn't you also say, not holding forth, of course, for the state governments, but that a lot of the projects and the actualization and feasibility for most of these projects are actually time-bound, meaning they may not necessarily take effect, perhaps during this administration, but subsequent ones could begin to put them into full use. For instance, the 21. All right, go on.
I don't think I am going to agree with you on this. Now, are you going to tell me that the infrastructural development in schools in this state are also time bound, that they are not going to be affected, at the government or the governor to tell the tribal people that at the end of it, 31 industries will be running in 31 local government areas effectively? Nobody asked him to say that. He said that. Now, before public officers make statements, I am very sure that integrity and discipline should have taught them that you only say the things you'll be able to achieve, and you don't say them because they are, you are driven by emotions. So, Akwa people did not mandate the governor or the government to say those things that they say. Most of these projects are things that can be done, and we will see them evidently. If there are things that are time bound or things that will not take effect, it's not going to be affected in our time, it is going to be affected later. There has never been a time like that. I mean, I am talking to you as someone who has consistently agitated for the development of my place. The one time in the local government, we were faced with a high array of bad roads. We kept agitating. As I'm speaking to you, I do not know if those projects are still ongoing in my place. But at the time I left, there was nothing ongoing.
Well, comrade, it's a one thing a short while ago about the lack of feasibility of most of the projects that the state governments or some governments across the country have promised. But we've seen series of commissioning of projects, inauguration of projects, and focusing the argument now on Akwa Ibom State. Recently, leading to the state's anniversary, dignitaries from across the country, regardless of your political divide. So, well, are you saying that most of these projects are actually a farce? Ceremonies galore to celebrate or inaugurate most of these projects, meaning some persons can lay claims to these projects being feasible, but it's contrary to...
Take for instance, the commissioning of the Ket Stadium. How many years did that project last? How many years did that project remain that way until the time it was commissioned? These are not things that we are supposed to be happy for. This is a project that was laid there for over about 5 years, 4 years. The people kept complaining, the people kept shouting, the people kept clamoring, come and complete this stadium. But this was a project that was there. Now, can you compare that particular project to the international stadium that we have in New York that was completed by Godswill Party? You don't expect us to begin to applaud the governor simply because you have finally completed a project and you came to commission it. After the people have gone through a lot to demanding that project be completed. Now, the second thing I want to tell you is that most of the projects that are done by the state governor and all of that, I am not disputing the fact that there had not been projects done and all of that. But my question is, what are the immediate and social effects these projects have on the people? Are you aware that there is no sense of decentralization of projects in Akwa Ibom State? Have you gone to the core rural areas to realize what is that area? So why do we concentrate development in only one part or most part of the, a few parts of the state, while others are still laying there? If you take, for instance, what is happening, in River State, you will realize the decentralization of projects all around. It goes to other areas. Take, for instance, the governor has not told us, or the government has not told us, what is the fate of the people and the China market that is still laying bare in the case up to this. How do you expect us to be happy about this? This is a major facility that is already bringing so much problem to a cat. People do not see spaces to pass through. And this is a city, this is a local government where there is little or no space. There is little or no space on a busy market day. You will understand what I'm telling you. So these are things we are supposed to be talking about and engaging the government on. Whether or not the governor commissioned projects during the state anniversary, the question we are asking is, what is the direct social impact of this project commission? Is it about the beautification of the round, of the state or of the roundabout, and all of that, or the ring road and all of that? My question, what is the direct impact of all of those things? Are beautiful, but we do not do things in governance because they are beautiful. We do not do things because they are beautiful. We do things because they directly impact the lives of people at the grassroots and the people.
Projects that some would say have laid waste since the inception of construction work on most of these projects. Again, there's been claims and counterclaims about who is actually responsible for initiating a bulk of these projects. For instance, I'll take you up on the China Market project. Appear to have been abandoned, and they've come out to say that these are mere initiatives by way of partnerships between the state governments and some leading members of the private sector. Just as they've said with virtually some other projects that we've seen being initiated partnerships with certain partners. So it behooves on these partners to also fulfill their end of the bargain before most of these projects are actually completed. If the government has come out to say so, would you say let's give them some soft landing? And perhaps keying to the words of the governor, who has severally said, before my administration elapses, I will complete every project we have initiated.
Well, Raymond, my brother, you don't expect me to applaud the government simply because the governor or the government came. You told the people you were going to execute a project. Poor market women and poor people were taking monies from. In a case, some women already started paying for their stalls. They paid serious chunk of money. They are not in the stores today.
Are they verified claims to this? Because I have personally spoken to some of the persons who were affected, overtaken by the mere magnitude of these projects. Well, some have said getting new stores is actually expensive, and so it's been basically difficult for them to do so. But we've not reports about those who have perhaps paid for the stalls but have not been allocated the shop. So do you have claims to verify the latest information you just shared with us?
The truth of the matter is that, like I had said earlier, most of these women paid money for the stalls in the new market. Most of them had their stalls taken away from them in the course of constructing that place. Some of those women today have gone back to be selling on the roadside. It is one of the reasons why I agitated against the local government when they said women should leave the roadside to sell inside. Because I said there is no market anywhere. Where do you want the women to sit and sell? The market is not developed. The only place they had to sell was taken away from them. So what do you want them to do? So for me, the government telling us that the private companies will not keep to their own bid of the demand, I mean, it is not responsible. If people had invested their trust and said, okay, a market was going to be coming, and later, for whatever reason, the market did not come, I expected the government to come down to the people of Eke to tell them, look, you are the greatest population of people who will be affected by this. Please, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. But we are going to reinvest, or we are going to redirect our channel on this thing with another group of persons. It is the responsibility of the government to go scout for other private persons who will instead invest in that particular thing if the former persons are not interested again. The government should not, or the government should not instead say, okay, since the private companies are no longer interested, let us leave it west. That is a major land of the people that has been led west. That is an access route of the people. The security of the people is threatened with that. We don't even have space where we are talking about. And we are even wishing if that market was even decentralized and taken to some rural parts in Eket, this one it was brought to the center of Eket, where there is no space. If for any reason there is an influx of population to Eket and that market is not developed, I bet you we may be suffering a serious population issue in Eket, and there may not be access. So it is a problem. We're talking about the security of people. We're talking about the health of people. We're talking about the livelihood, the best livelihood of people. A high level of investment of energy and attention into developing that market and working towards developing that market. Else, For me as a person, as long as that market still remains underdeveloped, the government has not done anything for the people of the local government area.
Interesting. Well, we've been talking about funds basically, and going forward, there are projections that the figures could change by way of just how much is shared between all three tiers of government, while we're still expecting, of course, proper legislation and, of course, as you've said, the political will to push through with most of these legislations, one of which would be the need to have full local government autonomy. So each tier of government is directly responsible for how it manages the funds that have been allocated to it. But let's quickly touch on the small matter of IGR by most of these states. That's the internally generated revenue, and the big subject about diversification, especially since it hovers around the state of the Nigerian economy, which is dependent on oil, as you and I know, which is why the oil producing state actually gets the benefits by way of the 13% derivation that comes to them. But we know with the state of things across the globe, President Buhari himself during the US-Africa Leadership Summit was calling on the Western president's way of saying we're still largely dependent on oil. I mean, when you're openly appealing to the international community to continue buying crude oil from Africa or oil-producing countries in these parts of the world, does it mean that we're not yet ready to take up the mantle of diversification, which is shifting away from oil as the mainstay of the economy to other areas that can actually benefit us? Because sooner rather than later, if the oil dries up, as is the fears of many in the next few years, or largely Nigeria fall to, if we're still largely dependent on oil, and we're talking about money here?
Well, for me, Nigeria is a multiple nation. In crude oil, we are blessed. In agriculture, we are blessed. In human resources, we are blessed. In tourism, we are blessed. I am only feeling we got so distracted by the wealth that we're generating from petroleum and from crude oil, so much that we began to forgo, to overlook the benefits that would have possibly come from the respective areas. I am strongly in agitation that the Nigerian state, or the subsequent state in Nigeria, should begin to invest more into tourism. I mean, surprisingly, you may not know the wealth Nigeria had. People would ordinarily pay so much to visit a place in Anambra State. Now, take for instance, for those of us in Akwa Ibom State, I tell you that one of the things the government has done so bad that I would be able to say anywhere is the fact that a major historic site at the Amalgamation House in Ikorobasi, the place where the announcement of the Nigerian Amalgamation was done in this country, has been laid waste, and the place is already getting scattered. The Lord Logar House is already getting scattered. What a privilege is it that we are the ones housing that particular historic site? But I tell you, the government has in and outside this country visit that site, visit those places, see the pictures of Lord Logar, see the wife's picture, go around those places, touch his old telephones and touch all of those things he possessed inside that house. The horns that was used in announcing the amalgamation, these are historic possessions. But I tell you, our state does not see any light in that level, and people who go there only go there to see all of those destroyed things there. And of course, if we are not careful, we may not even see any of those things again tomorrow. Go to the bridge of no return. All of Africa. I mean, it is just those guys will be seeing us as jokers, because the moment science and technology has been able to unravel better alternative means, to crude oil, there's nobody will want to stay back with you to be doing crude oil with you. Of course, crude oil itself and the burning and all of those, the production processes are ones that are not even good for human consumption, and of course, for the climate generally. And we are living in a dispensation where the world is generally advocating for, advocating issues concerning climate change and of course climate protection. So if you know clearly, you will know that the usage of crude oil, petroleum, and all of these things are ones that affect the climate greatly. Do you understand? So it is a movement where the world is trying to gradually move away from things that are affecting the climate. So if we are affecting the climate, of course, counter or threatening climate change and all of that. So for me, I think it is high time we invest in other areas, and of course also learn the craft and the skills of discovering other scientific and technological means of driving the things we need to drive alternative, to petroleum.
Well,
so for me, there is agriculture, there is tourism, there is human development, there is entertainment. A lot of young Nigerians are doing so well. I was in Nairobi for a period of time, and I tell you, I know how much South Africans, I know how much Kenyans, I know how much people outside this continent pay to watch Nigerian artists perform. Most of them not to perform, they know how much they pay to watch Nigerian movies and know how much they pay to listen to Nigerian songs. We have a lot of talent and a lot of opportunities we can always explore from. Thank you.
Yeah, so quickly, diversification is a broad subject, and you've mentioned some key areas which appear to be largely untapped. But one big concern about diversification, especially as it concerns the wealth and the resources abound in several states across the country, is still the small matter we discussed at the start as to the sharing formula. Who controls what, who gets what, who gives what, is still the big debate. You've been one of the strong advocates for the development of the Stops Creek, which I think it's somewhere in Esedeke or Eket local government area, if I'm not mistaken. And as someone who has advocated for an improvement of who controls, what comes out of that creek in the event that it is put into full swing, because the federal government would still want to get its share and then decide how much the state governments get and then what goes to the local government. So a big concern for most of the states when it comes to diversifying is that by way of what the Constitution actually provides, the federal government still gets the control or gets a lot of states, which is why a bulk of them are having cold feet about diversifying away from oil. All right, comrade, can you hear me? All right, we lost the call to Comrade Ekemini David. We'll do well to re-establish contact with him. Just in case you are joining in, it's Political Spectrum. And on burning issues today, we've been looking at the breakdown of the Federation Account Allocation Committee that was released last week. And the breakdown, of course, gave us deeper perspectives as to how much the federal government, the state government, as well as the local government have enjoyed by way of allocation to them from the federal coffers as have been made to improve on the lots of Nigerians. We have Comrade Ekemini David back on the line. Welcome back, Comrade. And just to reiterate on the point I made earlier on, the biggest concerns here for most of the state's governments when it comes to the issue of diversification is that by the time they do so, the federal government still gets to decide who takes what and who gets what. And I made reference to the Eket or Esedeke Stops Creek, which you've been a very keen advocate of. You've always championed the cause for improving the lots of the Stops Creek, which you believe can actually improve the IGR of the state. But let's assume that the Kwabam state government decides to invest massively in the Stops Creek. It would automatically become a national treasure. And at the end of the day, it's the federal government who would get the lion's share, and the state government gets whatever is given to them. The local government, of course, will feed off the crumbs. This is the argument for most who have said the current system that we operate, where the state takes more than the state and the local, should actually change.
Well, you see, on whether or not. On the issue of Okuya, Okuya is not going to be a national treasure. It is already a national treasure. Yeah, it is already a national treasure in Mobile. So it is already a national treasure that is already feeding the nation's economy. So we do not say that it is soon going to be a national treasure. No, the Okuya of the Ekila people is already a national treasure.
Okay, is it on a full scale?
Is it on what?
The exploration activity is taking place in the Stops Creek by ExxonMobil, as you have said. Is it on a full scale, or it's just something that has been initiated?
Whether or not it's not on a full scale, but the truth of the matter is that ExxonMobil has her drilling field in Akuya. So it simply means it is already a national treasure.
Okay.
Yes, it is already a national treasure. Now, on diversification and the fact or the sentiment that the federal government still takes a greater share of whatever that we are running. So if that has to be changed, it simply means a serious legislative process will have to be undertaken to change that. But meanwhile, that the federal government still takes more does not discredit the fact that state governments have their own share from the state government. From the federal government. It does not discredit that fact. It does not mean that a part of these funds are not sent to the state government or as compensation from the federal government are not sent to them. It is sent. It is sent to them. So my point is always that with the ones you have already at hand, the ones you have already, what are you doing with it? Can the level of development in your area, in your state, be compared to what you receive from the federal government? Because it is not about complaining that the federal government is taking so much. It is about ascertaining that what you get from the federal government, that there can be an equalizing pointer to validating, of course, to authenticating that whatever you have been getting from the federal government can be measured to what you have, to development that you have already in your state. So I understand that the problem is, or it may not be a problem to say, what is the level of development? Can we compare to what we have been given?
All right, interesting points indeed. And just before we wrap it up on the show this morning, I'd like to quickly put this to you, still bordering, of course, on the sharing formula of the Federal Account Allocation Committee and how well it has improved on the national growth. There are concerns as well that the fact that so much money has been shared among the free tires, and it's difficult to see where most of these resources or funds have been channeled to, is premised on the allegations that some politicians may be, stuffing cash up in preparations for the 2023 elections, in a time where allegations of vote trading and vote buying is set to be very rife. We may not be far from the truth about what happens to a bulk of these monies. So going forward, what do you think should happen? Many have said, let's call in the anti-graft agencies. If we're having so much money like this, being shared across the free tires of government, and Nigeria's economy is still as porous as it is, the World Bank and the IMF continue to warn that things might degenerate to a worse level. Yet on paper, we're seeing so much money being shared across the country. So based on the premise that some politicians are stuffing up cash for the conduct of the 2023 elections, can we pinpoint to where the problem actually arises from in terms of why Nigeria is still largely impoverished, and your advice as to what can be done to stem this very negative tide?
Well, for me, I think the other day when I spoke with you, I told you that in the Nigerian system, the very reason why most things cannot be done as regards discipline, public discipline, is because the hunter will have to be hunted as well. Almost everybody is guilty in Syria. But for me, I think as regards the state government, and of course, having to bring some sort of checks into the state government as regards the chunk of money that has been spent, I simply think that national accountability demanded of this government. This government should come out clean and plain, with accounts, with statistics, with numbers, with funds, that they had gotten. They should publish these things publicly. They should also tell the people what they have done with money. Unfortunately, the anti-grafts may not be able to do anything to the governor, that as a result of the immunity that covers that office. So maybe until after maybe after his tenure and the administration. But for me as a person, I think the federal government can step into this. I think the national legislature can also step into this. Some level of accountability should be made. These guys should be invited to give accounts of what they do, what they have done with the monies that they have, that they were given. I also want to commend some civil society organizations that have been, clamoring for accountability and have been digging up most of these details. So I think on the other side, organizations like that too can also, that's my position. But then, as regards public discipline in Nigeria, I would always tell you again, everybody in Nigeria is guilty. The hunter may be hunted.
Interesting thoughts indeed. Comrade Ekemini David, thank you so very much for joining us on Political Spectrum today.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was Comrade Ekemini David, public affairs analyst and civil rights activist, joining us to bear his thoughts on the issue of the breakdown of the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee's sharing formula to the federal, state and local government tires across the country. Top of the debate, of course, we're focused on how well these funds have largely improved. They can improve on most of those things. We also focus keenly on the funds that have been received by core Niger Delta states by way of 13% derivation, of course, narrowing the argument to Akwa Ibom State, and a keen focus on the industrialization mantra of the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Mr. Udom Emmanuel, because people are asking questions now. With these figures flying all around the country, while the country economy, until policies put in place by those in governance and those in power, we may likely stay the way we are. Well, we look forward to bringing you more details on this as the days progress, but that will be when next we come your way for another edition of Political Spectrum. Many thanks indeed for joining me. From me, Raymond Ita, and the rest of the crew, thanks for watching. It's bye for now.